Before we approve the minutes, like that,
Very good.
I'd like to invite Mary to open us up, please.
Thank you, committee members. Good to see all of you here again tonight. Please, thank you. Your commitment to this. I know our schedule has been a bit grueling lately, but we are serious about getting this done. So thank you for devoting your Tuesday and Thursday night to us. Folks from the community, we appreciate you being here always to listen in to the conversation. We appreciate your interest and willingness to support the committee in their work. So with that, I know we have lots to get done, and I will turn it back over to Mr. Stein so that he can lead us through the first.
Bob's not going to be here tonight. Could I get a co-pilot?
You're on your own.
He'll sign. Everybody ready? Welcome, everyone. We appreciate the attendance. I will note only anecdotally that the last couple of nights our population of the audience has gone down. I'm only going to take that to mean that everybody's really happy with what we're doing. And it's perfect so far. Well, nobody's saying no. Yeah. Or we're just boring you to death, which is more likely, I think. Scott, you are on the line? We hope.
Here.
I want to thank the committee for excellent attendance again. We're really running way over 90%, even though we doubled and tripled our number of meetings. I appreciate the effort. I think we can just go ahead and get started tonight. We asked Scott, let me just say this. We've got a goal for tonight, and that goal is, we hope, to at least tentatively figure out what our elementary school lines are going to be. We have examined our elementary lines significantly in the context of a number of our guiding principles, keeping neighborhoods together as best we can, eliminating some of the patchwork school attendance zones that we currently operate with. We've looked a lot at the capacities of our schools with the hope and goal to eliminate overcrowding, and with a byproduct of that, we hope maybe the elimination of portables wherever possible. We have, for the last 2.5 meetings, been discussing the relative value of the goal of socioeconomic diversity, and I think the public who has been following would agree that we've had a very clear airing of all of the metrics that go into that. I'm of the opinion that all the committee members, we have continued to communicate amongst ourselves between these meetings, and I'm convinced that everybody is fairly comfortable with their views and positions on the relative value of socioeconomic diversity as it impacts achievement in all of our children, district-wide, 40,000 plus of them. So with all of that as a backdrop, I've asked the committee to kind of review all of the guiding principles, and if there are some significant things that we have not addressed, I'd like to address them in the second half of tonight's meeting, and then see if we can get relatively comfortable with drawing some tentative lines. And the only caution that I would make to the general public is that absolutely no guarantees that we won't continue to tweak and try to make these the best they can be based on additional comments, particularly the public comments that we anticipate receiving on February the 12th and 16th. I hope that we can get some of these tentative lines drawn, and perhaps even middle school lines drawn before those public meetings, so that the public will have the opportunity to have examined them and share their thoughts back with us, good and or not as good. So that's our hope and goal for the night. We'll see if we can get there. We asked God to start with scenario C with the tweaks relative to the 1 mile radius around schools, and to identify where we can make some changes within those small areas that will help us achieve more of a socioeconomic balance. So, yes, sir, Bill.
Before we get started, there are two things I'd like to say. The first one is that I want to publicly state that I appreciate your you had to express some major changes in the community, and your leadership has been exceptional. So hopefully we can agree with unanimity on that. The second thing that I hope that we can agree with unanimity is that we need to approve the minutes. What I stated was,
You almost got there.
we almost got through it. Maybe we approve the minutes, and then we can move forward.
I'm one of the low-performing students. Well, let me respond first really quickly by saying I've said this publicly, and I will say it at the end. I appreciate your comments very much. Many of my colleagues and partners and friends and family continue to challenge my own academic standing by having accepted this responsibility, and my response has always been that I consider this to be a real privilege and honor to be able to help impact this many children for a number of years to come in Fayette County. I can't think of anything I could be working on more important. So thank you for that, Bill, and we'll now take a look at the minutes. You've received them, and I'm looking for any changes or corrections. Ron?
There's on the second page, it says I reiterated that the LBAR study was not a scientific study. I don't want to offend my friends at LBAR. It was basically, I was just questioning without enough information. See, and I understand it's been released now, but it may not be a representative study. That was my point. I wasn't trying to slam.
How would you like to make that change? What would you like it to say?
It may not be a representative study. That's what I would suggest. So, and if I can just make a comment, given what we've been talking about the last several meetings, I just think it's really, really important that people that are in low-income neighborhoods, that their kids go to low-performing schools with a high concentration of low-income kids, they really come out and talk to us at these public forums, because there's some assumptions being made here that, you know, that we don't know whether kids want to be moved away from a neighborhood school to a higher performing school. We really need to hear from these people, hear from the community about this. I mean, we're divided, we're not divided, we're split around this table in terms of our perspectives. We represent the community, the larger community, but we really need people to show up at these forums and tell us what they think about this.
Make sure that gets into the minutes for next meeting. So yeah, I'm working 2-minute meetings. Okay, any other corrections? Seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion for their acceptance. Lester moves and Austin somebody in that corner seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, get up and leave. All right. Very good. Scott, are you with us now?
I'm still here.
Good deal. We'd like to examine again scenario C with the changes that were suggested by Leanne at the end of our last meeting. Leanne, if you can and will, let us know if you think we hit it, what you were looking for, and we'll go from there. Everybody got it in front of them? What is this? Are you calling this a scenario D?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
We made significant changes to C, so I started with C and calling it D.
All right. Good enough. Everybody
Okay.
got that number changed? Okay, good. All right.
All right. Well,
Here we go.
I just put together this quick PowerPoint to walk you through my thought, my process, and how I came up with this scenario D. Again, this is just something based on the criteria you guys gave me and what we were talking about. I think I heard it correctly, and I think I'm applying it correctly. So let me just go through here and see what the criteria was. So from what I understood, you want me to start with draft scenario C. You want to try to make all the students that are within 1 mile walking distance go to their nearest school. Now, there was some students that were within 1 mile walking distance of more than one school. In some cases, I picked the study area that the majority of it was in one school or another. So there's some that could have went one way or the other. We can look at that if we want to do that, but those 1 mile walking distances where I tried. I tried to get all the free and reduced lunch resident population less than 90%. 90% was that number I thought was accessible from me that I came up with. And I wanted to keep the attendance area resident student population as close to capacity as possible. So those were my 4 criteria. And let me go you through the process of how I did this and what I came up with. So again, I started with...
Scott, just a second.
Yeah.
Leanne, are we good? This is what I understood also. Okay. We're good, Scott. You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I didn't butcher anything, right?
I
think you're awesome, Scott.
Okay, so I started with scenario C, which is what the last we came up with. This is just one of the maps I produced for it showing the percentage. That's my starting point. And what I did was, and when we say the 1 mile, I've heard you guys saying it, radius. There's a big difference between radius and walking distance. So let's remember, I'm doing walking distance. So that's actually what's happening, and I'm taking that point of the school, going onto the street network, and going out 1 mile from that street network. In some cases, because I didn't have time, it might have gone on the freeway, so we can take that into account as we're doing this, because of course that's not going to happen. But for the most part, it's 1 mile walking distance, not radius, from the actual school point. So what these spider webs you see are 1 mile from each school. And what I did is I had them go out 1 mile until they encountered another school's walking area. So that split, that center line, is right about halfway in between. And that's where I'm saying some of them were in one, a little bit more in one or the other, and that's where I made changes. That's where I made just some decisions, some judgment calls. These, when I created, I then tagged these study areas as study areas within 1 mile walking of a school. You see up there in Russell Cave, the reason why that's so big is because there's just gigantic study areas. So that's just the anomaly of that. And the study areas might be outside of that 1 mile, but if there's a good group of streets that are in part of that 1 mile, I included the whole study area. These I consider, these are my locked study areas. I don't want to move them. Well, I'm sorry. After I move them to their closest school, I don't want to move them again. So I was a little ahead of myself here. So what I did is I looked at, overlaid these study areas onto proposal scenario C. And if you look like in Booker T. Washington's area, you can see there's 3 triangle-shaped study areas there that has Harrison's color under it, but it's closer to Booker T. In Arlington, there's some like that. Down in Yates, there's some that are closest to William Wells Brown, same with Ashland and Harrison. James Lane Allen, you can see there's one in Picadome there. In Cardinal Valley, that one is actually closer to Cardinal Valley than to Harrison. So these are the study areas that I moved Clay Mills between Stonewall and Clay Mills. So what I did is looked at these study areas and then moved them to what their closest area was. So now you can see the James Lane Allen one is in James Lane Allen. Cardinal Valley, Cardinal Valley. Clay Mills is now, or the Stonewall one, grabbed those 3 study areas above. Southern got a little ugly, but those were really the 1 mile walk there because it moved into Lansdowne's attendance areas. For the most part, I tried to, on the rest of this, I tried to not touch these study areas when I'm adjusting boundaries because these study areas I moved into the closest school. The other study areas that within 1 mile, I also tried not to touch as much as possible. You can see up in Sandersville, too, there's that area to the north that's closer to Sandersville than it is to the proposed north. So here's what I came up with the 1 mile walk distance that we talked about.
Any of these show Veterans Park? And
I don't. They will at the very end. There weren't many changes to that. So this is what it looked like with that 1 mile walk assigned to it. So when I did that, after doing that, I had to look then, one of the other criteria was keep it under 90%. So I went back and looked at what the free reduced lunch, what it did. And I saw that Arlington was at 92%, Booker T. Washington 90%, Cardinal Valley at 94%, Mary Todd at 91%, and William Wells Brown at 92%. So from there, I went back to scenario D, and I called this one D1. It was my first iteration of D. So D.1, and identified study areas that had less than 90% that can move from one school to the other. And that's what you see here. So you can see in Cardinal Valley going down into James Lane Allen. You can see Booker T goes up into the proposed north. William Wells Brown goes to Yates. What this was doing is, because I wanted to keep those ones that are close to a mile to their school, I had to really add students and add areas that were less than 90% to those schools, because I didn't want to take a study area that was really close to a school. And so that made the change here. And you can see now Cardinal Valley goes down to the southwest. Booker T. Washington goes north. Arlington kind of takes up a big chunk up there. And then William Wells Brown goes down to the right. From there, I had to look to see what that did to my capacities. Oh, here's just without the study areas. Oh, I'm sorry. First, I looked to see how I did the free and reduced. and you could see that they all came down to 89%. So there's no, and that wasn't by design. It just happened to be that's where they all landed, at that 89% from wherever they were over 90. So it wasn't huge changes, but there was some changes. But I wanted to look what that did to my capacities, and that really blew my capacities out of the water. I went through and not only looked at the ones that I moved, but I wanted to look at some of the ones that were higher than others. So I looked at the Arlington ACE, that was 124%, Booker T 123%, etc. These are the ones that got changed in my analysis, and as I was going between D2 and D3. That doesn't mean I didn't try to change some of the other ones, but by changing some of the other ones, I was either going to bring it up over 90% FRAM, or I was going to have to move study areas that were within 1 mile of the school. So I didn't want this one to take away what I had done on the first 2 steps. So I had concentrated on these 7 schools to try to bring down their capacity. Again, I tried to do that in others, but was unable to without getting the other 2 criteria out of whack. So and from D2 to D3, I attempted to bring study areas and reduce the capacity for those schools that were pretty far over. You could see these are the study areas I moved, and I've got a listing if anybody's interested. I didn't send it yet, but I could send it later, of all the study areas that are involved in these moves. So what I did is move stuff around. So you can see here in Booker T, Washington, there was, let's go to this one. I moved this area from north to Booker T. I moved this area, and I believe that was from Sandersville into north. I'm sorry, this area I moved from Booker T to proposed north. I brought northern around here. Russell Cave came down into this area, and Arlington only came into here. It's a non-contiguous area, but it was as close as I can get to Arlington. I moved this area from William Wilms Brown to Yates, these 2 areas to Harrison from Ashland, these areas from Picadome to Harrison, this area from Cardinal Valley to James Lane Allen. I expanded the Clay Mills area to over here. And then Lansdowne, I went to these just kind of to clean it up. So this is what it looks like after those changes. This is scenario D3. So I had to examine this based on what I did with the moves I had done. So what did I use? Oh, Southern, I'm sorry. Yeah, Southern, I had to bring some of these from Southern into Lansdowne. So it brought Arlington from 188% to 128%, ACE to 113, Booker T to 115, Cassidy to 102, Rosa Parks to 114, Sandersville to 97, and Southern to 106. And again, I couldn't lower other ones that I tried without hurting the other 2 criteria that we were looking at. So, starting with draft scenario C, I was able to get all within 1 mile going to their closest schools. I was able to get all of them at less than 90%, and as much as possible I was able to move them within to get that close to their capacities. There are some exceptions. So this is what I came up with. This was my final map, the working map we're looking at. I did do some changes down here. on the southeast between Spars and 8th. You can see there was one or two areas that I changed. I don't believe Veterans Park or Mill Creek changed. It might be this one study area, but I'll have to look at. We'll have to look at that. Clay Mills did take up a big area here. Again, northern Arlington here. Harrison went down south here. So if I look at this again, looking at the draft scenario D, I've got them as close as I could without making either doing some serious non-contiguous areas to get under capacity, and I got everything to 89% or lower, and we know that they're all within 1 mile. So that's scenario D. And, I also then, and that should be here, is I also looked at it with the forecasting out just to see what that did to some of these areas. And we can examine that later. I think you guys are more interested in what's happening now than the forecast. We can look at the forecast later, but I just want to let you know I did examine it looking at the forecast. So does anybody have any questions? Or does anybody not have any questions? Let's start there.
Well, Leanne, I want to start with you.
Oh, it's perfect. You know, I'm so glad that Scott was able to do this, and I think it makes a lot of us at least realize that some of this just cannot be done due to the capacity stage. I certainly don't want anyone to think that we work with insane, just to please me or anyone else, but
That's why we've had multiple scenarios every night.
I appreciate it, Scott.
Other thoughts, please?
Just reiterate that. I mean, it's yeoman's work, Scott. You're earning your pay here, and I am looking at the projections for 2018 and out, and some of these that are still pretty significantly over capacity are only going to get more so with this scenario. So I think that's another reason.
That is definitely another reason.
I think that with any potential overcrowding, that's undoing any good that we were trying to do with reducing free and reduced lunch number.
Al, would we be able to find some data? It seems like that there was some stuff included in some of our earlier spreadsheets where we might be able to determine in some of these schools that there are a high percentage of residents that choose to go to private schools that might reduce some of these capacities before we start micro-tweaking.
Yeah, I actually sent that along with this packet of stuff. I'm not sure if that was passed out to this committee or not. But that's what we call the attendance matrix, and I should have one of those available because I recalculated based on the 2014-15 school data. Let's see.
We do, Jim or Ron?
So, for example, in Arlington, there's 416 students residing. This is the current Arlington boundaries, and there's 379 of those 416 actually going to Arlington. They're only getting 29 transfers in, so about 7.1%.
Can you redo those numbers without those, with that 7.1% gone?
I'm not sure. Can I redo them with what?
These are actuals.
These are the actual numbers? Like, can you redo the predictions for like 1820 with actual numbers so that we can see what it actually will look like?
Well, we can't determine in the future. You're talking in the forecast. we can't determine where those students are going to go to school. We at this point, there's really no way of determining where they're going to go to school. We could possibly apply those same in and out numbers to the projections, but it's really making some huge assumptions. By doing that, we would assume that the students that are going to be there 4 years from now, some of them 4 or 5 years are, 5 years they're not even born yet or just about to be born. We're going to make the assumption that they're going to follow the same transfer patterns that students are going through right now. Programs change, teachers change, the whole area changes. So I can't say that we definitely can do that. Well, I'm sorry. We can do that. We could do anything. We can come up with any number, but how accurate it is, I can't vouch to the accuracy because, again, 5 years out, there's a whole new group of students in there.
Scott, help me understand this chart. This chart is the current numbers for this year. You look at the private schools, and all of those are listed as zero. So do we have that information about the people in these assigned to these school areas who are going to private school or who are being homeschooled?
Yeah, unfortunately, that wasn't given to me from the city yet. So I don't have that information, but I thought this was important, at least through the ones that are in your district, to get this to you as soon as possible. I've been waiting on that data. I don't have it yet. Once I get it, I can insert it into there. So I'm hoping this shows, with the process I went for D. I know there's going to be problems with it. There's going to be things we want to adjust. I think we have to then, as a committee, look at it and say, okay, where are we willing to compromise? Where is it better to have students transferring or being bused across schools, or is it better to have, the issues? I believe as a committee has to come up with what the compromises you need to make to get these things to the way you think they should be.
Scott, can I ask you a question?
Anna.
The form that you have up on page 3, you have, for the schools, the percentage enrolled in the resident schools. Are these current percentages enrolled in the schools? Okay, so, like for Cassidy, for example, 89.5% of resident students go to that school. And right now, Cassidy is 102% over capacity linked to residents.
Yes.
So are we safe to assume that if you take 102%, multiply it by 89.5%, that's the actual number that will most likely be in the school with this redistricting?
Again, yeah, you could make that assumption, but if you're looking 3, 4, or 5 years down the road, they're a whole new group of students.
Right.
I mean, that's true, but this is all kind of one big assumption.
Yeah, but we have to baseline to understand where we're going.
But that opens up room in the school, and so it's not overcapacity if we factor in the fact that,
Right now,
well, if you look at Cassidy, there's
Well, also remember some of these schools, like if you look at Cassidy again, there's 740 students residing in that area. Are those 11.4 or 10.5% students not going to Cassidy because they just couldn't fit? Why are they not there? So there's some of them that are because, look at Breckenridge. Only 66% actually go to Breckenridge, but there's almost 300 students that can't fit there. So we can't make those assumptions that it's going to be the same later on. Wouldn't we assume that Breckenridge would probably be closer to 80 or 90%? And that's why we look at things of where students live.
Couldn't we
make some assumptions a little bit safer on private schools. The students that are in private school might be likely to continue in private school. And that number, I think we can extrapolate with what we've got. Even though there's zeros, we know where they're not going, right? We know how many live in an area. We know how many are accounted for in the various schools. So what's left is either private or homeschool, right?
I don't have the number of how many students are living in an area. These total resident students are Fayette County Public Schools students. If a student's going to a private school, going to another county's school, being homeschooled, the private and homeschool will have that information, but I don't have a count of the total number of school-aged children in the area. These are that 416 represents the number of Fayette County Public School students that reside there.
I'm looking at this right. There's 416 kids at Arlington now. We're projected 607 kids at the school with 475 capacity. Where we put them? And then 620 next year, 613, 586, 574. Don't fit no way, no how in 5 years.
Now, what school are we talking about?
Arlington.
Arlington?
Well, not so far down the map to figure out the same. Looking at, and what Doug's looking at is scenario D, the projections within scenario D, and the current enrollment within scenario D, and it's painfully obvious the capacity is going to be a major hurdle with us trying to address the free and reduced lunch of some of the schools.
Well, I think that's right, but as a practical matter, I don't think we're going to land there. I mean, the projected numbers are, through the roof in that case. But thank you. But I think it's realistic to think that we're going to accept that without tweaking it or even modifying it.
This puts 16 schools over 100%, anywhere from 101 to 128. 16 schools. That's a lot of tweaking.
That only accounts
That's
for.
a lot of tweaking. It's just math. You know
No,
that, right?
I know that. That's what I just wanted to reiterate is that is the projected residents. It doesn't take into account these numbers at school of kids that leave the area to go to other schools. So yes, there's a lot of them that are over 100%, and some of them may be closer to 100% than they look at the moment. I don't know.
Scott, did you happen to run scenario C as it was where we started with the forecast for the projected number of students to see where those schools would come up?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I think you should have that.
And those numbers were high also. So like what I want to point out is even though there are some really high numbers, if you look at Arlington, the capacity is definitely over, and that would have to be tweaked. But even with an over capacity, with the new scenario, the free and reduced lunch is still decreased in this scenario, which is one of the things that we were looking at. So when you look at because like on his projections it says current, that's not our current as of what we're living in today. That's current as of scenario D. If you go back and look at the current attendance areas of elementary schools as of today, what we're living in today, some of these changes are really, really good. What you're looking at is current and projected. Like go back and pull up the current attendance areas from current as of right now before scenario D, and then make some of the comparisons, because that's what we're trying to change. Like what we're looking at, you can't really look at C and D and D. We got to look at our actual current state to what we're doing. We can't look at changes we made yesterday and versus changes we made today. Neither one of those actually exist. So you actually have to look at reality versus what we're trying to do. And it's not as horrible when you look at it that way.
If you are looking at proposed scenario D, and you were looking at numbers of free and reduced lunch students in these schools, even though it is under 90%, you are increasing the number of free and reduced lunch students in the schools. So you're balancing a percentage on paper, but you're not balancing any numbers at all. You're making it worse than it was. I think.
And from a teacher's perspective, you know, talking about going from 94 to 89, that might be a student in your class. So if I've got 25 students and now I went from 23 or free reduced lunch to 22, I don't know that's going to make a significant impact on what I'm able to do in that classroom.
Well, it's not because you're going to have 30 in your class.
Right.
I mean, if you're going over capacity, instead of having 25 kids in my class at 90% free and reduced lunch, I now have 30 students in my class at 89% free and reduced lunch. So,
So in terms
so I have more students.
philosophically, you're probably worse off.
Yes, I now have more students to teach with higher needs.
Capacity issue.
Yeah, but the percentage is gone.
Yeah. I mean, the answer is not having 30 kids in a classroom. We all know that.
I currently have 34.
Okay.
Bless your heart.
You're a rock star.
You're a rock star. That's right. But nevertheless, our goal would be to get class sizes that are what our principals and teachers have told us are optimum. And 34 is probably not it.
Well, Alan, I think Bob Joyce said this Tuesday that ideally if you're going to have a low-income school, that to have it under capacity would be more manageable for the teachers.
Right. He did say that. Yes.
So I think we go back to the map from here and start looking at capacity.
My question is, okay, so we're looking at the new map compared to the C and D, and we've adjusted the free and reduced lunch. Will when we go back to adjust the capacity, we might just be taking it back to where we started from. Is some of these areas, you know, are we going in circles is my question.
You already did that.
Right. It's like, it seems like we keep going back and forth, and every time you adjust one, it changes the other. It's not balanced, it's not making a difference.
Well, by my count, scenario B2 on free and reduced, on capacities, even if you give a 10% variance so that 90% is okay and 110% is okay, we're still looking at 10 schools that, you know, with a third of our schools that are outside those ranges. With that, at least with the work that Scott's given us here.
And I can't believe that's going to be good on any of us.
And then trying to readjust those back down to get them at 110 or below is going to have other impacts, you know, on other schools.
Put us right back at C.
Right. Going backwards.
Now, I do like where he changed it with the walking, because I know there was some significant difference, like in Veterans Park, we included the people who could walk there. I think it changed the Stonewall people who could walk there. I really like that. I just don't like the other.
Is that D1?
B1.
Come at D1, select.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was the worst one.
No, I mean,
So can we put the study areas back up so that we can look at it and see what?
Yeah. If you guys want to take a shot at it, I mean, that's what I'm here for, really. This was just my attempt interpreting what you had said. I would much rather feel much more comfortable if you guys decide which way you want to go and make those moves.
Folks, what do we think we've learned with this exercise? Are we learning anything?
So we're going in circles?
Yep. And it seems a really good base plan.
I agree with that.
Say that again?
I think we're going in circles, and I think we need to take scenario C as our base plan, do whatever small tweaks we need to do to C, and be done with it.
I agree.
Yeah, I would concur with that.
I thought the first two steps of B looked pretty good on some of these.
Me too.
I don't think we should completely throw out
I don't.
C in its entirety.
Capacity,
except for the capacity results.
Yeah.
Right.
We can't have schools at 188% capacity. That's
But on
not good
C
for us.
C was in capacity.
C was in pretty good shape. C was in good shape.
And then we can make adjustments, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No.
See, we could
One thing
probably
that we
probably
have in
up to
common.
86% with their.
Let me do this
2,
backwards. Oh, Melissa.
Well, one thing that we haven't even begun to
7,
address, and just
8,
by
9,
glancing
10,
and speaking of
11,
scenario C, that seems like it's going to fit a little more naturally into the feeder pattern, and we've not even begun to discuss that. Once we get into the feeder pattern issues, it's not an issue. But
Get our language.
that's going to, yeah. That's just going to, I feel like that's going to require even backtracking more.
I would just like to put out on scenario C, there are still 12 schools that are over capacity.
That's what we're going to,
So I don't see how it's
Well,
any worse on D if it's
overcapacity
10.
meaning 101% or 111.
123, 116.
How many of them?
I'm talking about right now. There's
How many of them are over 100?
How many numbers are lower?
The variance that
We've only got one school on scenario. We have one school on scenario C that's going to be at 125% currently, but it falls off significantly in the next 3 years.
to
120%.
And then we have, and then we
As
have
we talked about,
the
those,
high-performing school
We got some
already,
wiggle room on
and they're doing
We
okay
don't
at
have nowhere
100%.
ours and nowhere no house. What's in our people?
and then on Breckenridge it's at 107 now, and it's going to go to 132.
And I know Nathan Chelmsford is going also to decrease it slightly, not a lot, but it decreased slightly over the time. And Rosa Parks is doing fine, even though they're over capacity. They have the support systems in place with their homes and parent involvement. If they're okay at 122%, we can take and lower some class size. Don't tweak that so much where you're sending them someplace else to try to alleviate socioeconomic balance when you're actually going to put more kids in another school that can't really afford to have that parent involvement. Does that make sense?
It does, but I want to be careful that if we say that for one particular school, that we just kind of go down that slope, slippery slope. Say, well, you know, we let this school, because they could handle it. They like it. They're performing well. I mean,
Well, I think
we
that's
could say that about a number of schools, actually. And I understand our charge to track, to work within the capacities that make sense. And there may be exceptions, and we may end up with that. In fact, in scenario C, the reason Rosa Parks was at 123, was because we said just that.
Yeah, but if we move, if part of the area at Rosa Parks, we move to try to alleviate the overcrowding at Rosa Parks, then we overcrowd Stonewall, it goes from 100% to 123%. If we move, then we have to start moving it around to Clay's. We start this crazy loop again that, okay, we've moved these kids to get Rosa Parks, for example, down, but then we overcrowd the next school, and we've got to move that school somewhere else. So we're chasing our tail.
Actually, you can Garden Springs, Garden Springs is under capacity.
Scott,
There's all kinds of things you can do.
the scenario D capacity number you're looking at, this was the result of D2 changes, correct?
Yes.
Could we look at the capacity numbers for D1? That's it.
Good luck.
It's in there. It's the second slide.
We're not seeing it, Scott.
Yeah, it's right here.
D2?
Yeah,
D1.
Right here.
Okay, we have the free and reduced lunch, but we don't have the capacity.
Oh, the capacity.
I'm sorry.
See what I have. I might have that raw data. Yeah.
Just trying to not backtrack all the C, but just see what it looks like.
This is the capacities. I don't know if you can see it well.
You got A's at 124 going up to 146. Am I reading that correct?
Where do you see?
No, I think that's great.
I'm looking at it from here. I just don't see where it's going. I don't see where it goes up.
But there are 9 schools above 110.
So that's still low.
Rose Park's
Lower than
123,
you can see.
Southern 130, Sandersville 112.
Maybe this is one.
Yeah, look at it.
So there's less schools in B1. There's less schools in B1 over capacity than in C.
Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. None. Same thing. 10.
So it's 9 in B1.
I'm just looking at overs.
Wait, did you say there are 10 schools there that are over capacity?
No.
No, over 100.
Okay.
So D1 doesn't actually make some of the schools higher over capacity than area D that we're looking at. Not acceptable. So I just don't see a way beyond this besides, in my opinion, I don't see a way beyond this besides going back to C and seeing if we could do some tweaking to C, but there's something we can't do.
And we're just going to have to pick one and make changes from, I mean, we're just going to have to, in order to move forward, we're just going to have to pick one and then work from there.
Quick question.
Scott. Okay.
Yes. So on the school of residence, it has the A capacity at 700. In the document that you have up right now, Scott, it has it at 650. Which one is correct? That's a significant difference.
Right.
I think, you know what, that's a good question for Bob, who's not there, unfortunately. The other document has it at what? At
700. The actual capacity is 650 for A's.
I think that's mixed with the fact that there's a portable there right now.
Right.
yeah, and if you remember, you asked me to reduce some of the capacities because of special programs. I don't remember if this is one of those schools.
Thank you.
So then that's 2,
3. I think they're counting
3 portables.
6 extra 5. What do they build out there that they hold that Saturday special class, international class? That's right, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've got 650 on scenario D.
I mean, that makes a difference. So we're looking at different numbers on different things. Nope.
Scenarios here, he has
All under 90% is at 650.
Scott, I don't know if you heard, but I believe that we resolved that 50 students issue at ACE because of the portables. The actual building capacity is 60.
Oh, okay.
Portable. So sorry for keep you looking at that.
It's correct.
As long as everything else
It's correct on this report. Alan, it's correct on here.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's 650, so these numbers are correct.
Okay. Other thoughts here?
So I've heard a couple.
What do you all think?
Lester?
Go from there.
Now, why are we choosing the overdue?
All right, I'm going to make a recommendation, and I'm going to see what the consensus, or at least majority of the committee is thinking. I think I'd like to go back to scenario C. Let's take a look at that and see if there are just a few study areas that might help us on our free and reduced numbers. Trying to stay at our capacity levels. And I have a list of study areas that have been recommended to us in Let's Talk over the last few weeks. And there are three particular study areas that have been mentioned over and over and over. In many cases by the same people each week, over and over. But nevertheless, I'd like us to look at those study areas also with scenario C and see if we can address some of those smaller concerns also. So that's my suggestion. Ready?
Sounds good.
Is it possible to do scenario C, Scott, with the 1 mile walking overlay on that?
The study areas that within 1 mile?
That would be one.
Is that D1?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Alan, I don't want to complicate things anymore, but do you think it's too early to maybe put the feeder pattern one over it, so when we make those changes, we can take that into consideration? Or do you think that's too much information all at once?
It is right now. I want us to get to a point tonight, if we can. And I think that once we do that, the feeder patterns will come more easily because we'll have something really to look at. There's been some conversation that I've heard in the community about even adding one more school before we draw lines. We know that we're adding 2 elementaries and 1 high school. I've heard that there's a possibility of another elementary school that could really relieve one of the areas that we're talking about. Mary, are you free to discuss that?
I guess we'll have middle school ideas as well.
As you know, we do on our current district facilities plan have both another elementary school identified as well as a middle school. And I can tell you, we haven't gotten exact locations, but we are looking for locations and are in active conversation on property that is out the Richmond Road corridor, essentially for both of those. What we had identified is a need. Obviously, there's the area probably in near the between Ace and Squires and Breckenridge in that general vicinity. Also for middle school, we were really torn, between do we need one between East Jones Hayes and Hayes Creek Middle, or do we need one over in the Jesse Clark Beaumont area? And it appears that we might be able to identify property that would meet our requirements between in the Hayes Creek. Now, that being we're still looking and talking. That will not be ready by the time we need to implement a redistricting plan. But in terms of looking at a possible phased plan, it would be potential that we could continue to utilize portable classrooms in that general vicinity for a period of time until we could acquire property, design buildings, if that helps.
Yes, it will.
In layman's terms,
Yes.
what you just said.
I just told you that we are actively looking for property and expect to have property to build a new elementary school and a new middle school out the Richmond Road corridor basically in that general area.
So how many years? In each area we can utilize those portables until the other ones
That
possibly.
would be possible. And how many years? I would say if we could finalize acquisition of the property, let's say within the next several months, remember that it takes at least, we've got some limits here. We've got to look at our bonding capacity. We need to design a building, which usually takes at least a year. And then we also have to build it, which I would say takes a couple of years. So, roughly 3 years. Plan on at least 4 to get all of that done. But in the meantime, yes, we could use, continue to use the early childhood area or the Japanese school area at Hayes, which is currently being used for middle school children. We could continue to use portable classrooms if we wanted to go ahead and think of a phased plan for
So if we have, as we're looking at scenario C in terms of capacities, we can have some comfort that larger capacities out there would be acceptable.
I would say so.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Makes it easier, I think.
So I would recommend that we look at scenario C with that in mind. And see where we can go. Do I have a consensus? I've seen a bunch of nodding heads.
Yes.
I can only hear a couple of you when you do that.
Some of it's smarter than others.
Okay. Scott, we're back to scenario C.
All right, I've set it up calling it scenario D or E now, so just to keep them separate. I heard a lot of people said something about maybe we look at C and then look at the study areas that got moved between C and D1, and that's what I have up here right now.
Well, if you're responding to the comments about the study areas,
yeah.
These are prior to tonight. These are what we've heard from the public in the last week and a half about areas that we should consider tweaking or moving.
Oh, yeah, actually I was talking about these green hashed study areas are the ones I moved from in scenarios D1. These are the ones that are within a 1 mile walk distance of a school, but they're not going to that school. So I don't know if that's something we want to revisit or if we just want to go with your study areas.
Let's go with our study areas, correct?
Okay.
Well, our research, how do you want me to do this? All right.
Just go with what you got, Al.
Okay, brother.
Yeah, just give me a study area number, I can go to it.
417. 417. That's where we go. 468.
Should we take them one at a time?
Well, it's all in a row. 68,
Okay.
69, and 71.
It's a neighborhood.
Yeah, they're all in the approximate neighborhood.
'68, '69, '17.
17, 68, 69, 70, and 71.
They're already in there.
Okay.
They're here too.
Yeah, I suspect that some of the Let's Talk messages get to us a couple of days later, or that individual didn't keep up with the next meeting or whatever. But, then, to a lesser degree, we're looking at 557.
He's still doing it.
Oh, he's still doing it. Okay. Sorry.
Well, what's the issue with these? Let's.
Stonewall.
Mostly Stonewall, some Rabbit Run, some Andover. Oh.
Stonewall.
Well, to these three study areas we assigned to Clay Mills, but they are within a mile walking distance of Stonewall. And let me turn that on too. So you can see these streets that are blue. These blue streets are within 1 mile of Stonewall, so only this little area here is outside of that, out of these three study areas.
All that corporate drive is in offices.
So that's why these three study areas in my D scenario got moved back to Stonewall.
Let's do it again.
Scott, could you show us the capacity numbers as you start moving these study areas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good call, Bryce. And just for the committee, what I'm trying to accomplish here is to try to be receptive to the areas that seem to have legitimate questions about what the scenarios have led to. It is by no means an attempt to change anything, but rather just to take a look at it and see if we have made some mistakes or overlooked anything.
I don't know why, for some reason my streets aren't turning back on. There we go.
It's an infrastructure problem we got to deal with.
It really is.
Can you handle that for us, Jim?
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
We need that high-speed internet.
Gigabyte, baby.
Okay, so we've got those. We moved them back. It brought Stonewall up to 111.
You got it, so it's going down, 40.
Now what study area? No.
It dropped 88%.
Well, one of the calculations on 73.
It's going to 89.
Now, is that acceptable to everybody, or is?
Projections for Stonewall are going down. So,
Can we see the projected for Stonewall?
That's putting all of those study areas back in Stonewall.
Yes, could we see the projected multi-year capacity numbers for Stonewall with those in?
From which scenario? Scenario C?
Yes. Well, the change you just made, can we now see what the projected capacities are out in several years?
Yeah, I'd have to. You'd have to give me a second. I have to bring up a different plan, but I can do it. Once we get looking at projected plans, we won't have the ability, without going back to the other plans.
We got the numbers for C already. If we're just going back, we've already got that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We can't change it as we go.
Yeah.
We can look at the projected when we get to a stopping point.
But can we get the free and I think we get the socioeconomic on there so we can see how that's affecting that area as we go along? Get the capacity, but not the percentage.
Yeah. Unfortunately, on the same plan, we can't look at socioeconomic and forecast. So, do we want to look at the forecasts or socioeconomic first? Let me know and I can do it.
Forecast.
Yeah, let's just look at all of that at the end.
Let's do all the tweaking first.
Yeah, let's
just face it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was involved.
Scott, there are a couple of other study areas that we're looking at also.
Okay.
Where did I leave off?
You just do the first 4.
7.
99.
You're looking at that little area. Let's see, where's 577? 57.
Which one did you say?
That's the veterans
I said,
part.
I've got 557. 598. 596. 563. 558. 558.
You know what? Hold on. Okay.
That's them too much of that.
All right. What was the first one? You know what? We're going to have to go through that again. I'm very, very sorry. What was the first one?
557.
Are these all in the same area?
Currently,
Clumped together, or one.
Yeah, I think so. I can't. I don't see all that.
You just got to list the numbers.
Right.
Well, let's go to 557 and see what else is in there. Near there. Okay, here's 557.
Where is it?
It's right between Southern.
Oh yeah, I got it. 557. 55. Well, study area somewhere. 558.
Right here?
Sir. 563.
563?
598.
Right here?
we did do 557. 558. We did that. 568.
Oh, I don't know. The two of them are in better. The two are in Southern.
there's no way.
They're both at 99.
Say where they are currently.
Yeah. You can see.
They're currently in Southern, but they can walk to Veterans Park from where they are.
Yeah, I can put up the current numbers too.
Well, the capacity of Veterans Park, so let's put them there.
Mm-hmm.
You want them at Veterans Park?
Do you remember what the comment was about those areas?
I'm sorry.
'Cause I think I remember some of the comments were about moving areas and saying they can walk when that's really not the case.
598 too, Scott.
It's going to be
James, I think you're right. But I can't remember. There's so many of them. You know, this is out of probably 100 pages, so let's stop. Is that right, Anna? Did I say that right? Yeah. No, but it's the one that we've got significant conversation about. That's what I see them.
Well, veterans is already at 100% capacity before we added these areas to it.
Well, I got it.
Blue is current boundary.
Yeah. The blue is the current boundary.
Thank you.
Gotcha, that includes 557 as well.
If the study areas decide to draw, we will get that. I believe this is 557. If the study areas...
557 is the triangle one next to it.
This one?
No.
I don't... I think my computer's tired. For some reason, it does not want to draw these study areas.
Yeah, so am I. There we go.
There we go. Come on, keep going. This is 557. Veterans Park is already at 108% with that change I just made.
They're 108
With that change.
with those things, okay.
With these three here.
Big 557.
That's without 557.
557 has a neighborhood. I don't think 599 and 600 are they?
I changed these three study areas right here.
Waterford.
I live in Waterford, and that's all split up there. Got them cut in half, basically.
I know, and I'm saying I would.
Well, then you'd have to go farther than 557 to keep Waterford in there. It goes the other side of Clearwater Way.
Okay, I got it. Well, we did that.
557 includes Clearwater straight down to Buchanan Ward. That curve right there is Clearwater. 556, I believe, is where Glassford picks up.
No, Ron's correct. 556.
Oh, they want Waterford.
I think 556 is also Waterford.
No, 556 is Glassford. Moon Coin is over there, and that's Glassford, not Waterford.
Look, the moon point back. I can't see the screen. I don't have.
Yeah, it is. You're correct.
Clearwater cuts halfway through 557.
Gotcha.
Well, I think the idea is it 596 and 598? In Veterans Park, are they in there with that 108?
Let's get 557 in there first, Alan. We've already got
It is part of Waterford.
Yeah, we're looking at kids living next door to each
Currently,
other.
all of Waterford goes to the suburb, so.
They need to stay together. Like
So 557 is the most important to move at this point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that brings it to 105.
Thank you.
Veterans is projected to go down.
balance out.
94 Southern. So then Sunday, some of these kids,
Veterans dropped 8%
Well,
in 2016.
Veterans checks out. Are we okay there? Is that
Thanks, Malcolm.
598, 599, 600. So that.
We're already at 100. We're already at 105%.
Point Drive. That's part of the Pinnacle neighborhood, the Pinnacle split that have currently.
Yeah.
So you take the front half that already goes to veterans, if you pick up the back, they'll find the neighborhood as a whole would be together.
That brings it up to 113% if I move these in. And Southern's at 86.
Okay, so
Now, can I ask a quick question? Are these three, 557, 563, and 558, those are one neighborhood, is that correct?
Yes.
yes.
And they're currently going to Southern.
Yes.
Why don't we keep these students in Southern and bring these students, because this is a neighborhood also, correct?
That's actually comprised of two. The north part is actually Waterford, and the southern part is Pinnacle.
Oh, 558 or 598 is more of Waterford?
It's a split between the two neighborhoods. The top
598 comprises both
both neighborhoods of Waterford and Pinnacle.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to suggest moving these study areas into Veterans Park and these study areas into Southern.
557, 558, 563, that's a straight walk right down the street.
To Veterans.
Park.
Yeah.
Down the street.
But to be
Yeah, they're all with the. Go ahead.
To be clear, 598, which lists Poplar Springs and River Ridge, are Waterford as well. The dividing line goes into South Point, becomes the Pinnacle neighborhood. Therefore, you had the same scenario in 557 where you had the neighborhood split.
Well,
8 and 600, those are two neighborhoods that join back to themselves if you combine them all into veterans.
if I move the study area line, again, this is not something we want to get into a habit in, but I split a neighborhood that I didn't mean to split or shouldn't have split. I could move this line and perhaps something like this.
That is the neighborhood right there. Woodfield on north is the southern part of Waterford.
So 598 could go to Waterford, and I could absorb this portion into 599. And then we could bring this portion into Waterford, into Veterans Park, and this portion stay in Southern. Is that acceptable?
But before we do that, we now have the projection numbers, so why don't we take them into account? And veterans is projected to drop by 10% by the time these changes go into effect.
But, I mean, that's before we had these new, he did that based on the past. We're moving whole new study groups, which is different neighborhoods, so when those projections are going to change.
But they might change a little bit, but the fact is that the Veterans Park is projected to decline over time. And these changes aren't going to go into effect until a couple of years down the road. So I don't think that we need to get it right to 100% when we know that at least some significant portion of veterans is going to decline 10%.
Even if you add a growing part of new subdivisions?
There's not yet, there's not yet.
There's no growth.
Not big man.
We asked
Oh,
for the
no, we
projection
can roll,
numbers,
and we need to know
so
that is.
I agree. Yeah. We talked about it for 3 weeks.
Yeah. All right, let's do that. Scott, let's do as you suggest, breaking that between Southern and Veterans at the neighborhood, the natural neighborhood lines.
All right.
And then unless somebody else has another study area that they want to take a look at beyond those that we just listed, let's see what we've got.
I had two more that we have to look at, 396 and 398.
They didn't make my list.
They've been on my list.
Okay.
What school is that?
That's Glendover Lansdowne. It's the little part that you get to walk under the New Circle Road that we talked about at one point and never went back to. You have to go under an underpass and the issues with that.
What's the issue with walking under the underpass on that road?
It's not as close as it kind of shows on the map. And going through the underpass is not a scenario that the kids at that age were wanting to do by simply saying that they're really close to the school. It's just 2 little sections that stick out underneath New Circle.
Is it on Lansing?
It's on Lansdowne Road, which goes right on it.
What was the study area numbers?
396 and 398.
And these 2 study areas going to the school. So what was the issue here? We were not sure that we want these students. This is the way it is currently. This is the current boundary.
Yeah, but it's still, it's kind of splitting it up in the neighborhood according to the words we've been getting, and then it's just not a, while it may look like it's an easy underpass walkthrough for kids, it's not, it's more of a danger and safety. It's not an ideal situation that has been going on for a while that they would like to see corrected.
And
we're
move.
Do these and then see what it looks like.
See what it looks like.
We may have for
There's certainly room in Glendover for them.
And it's pretty flat numbers too, so it's not going to be a capacity issue going forward.
That seems to work. And it takes care of that little crown.
Well, Lansdowne is trending up. So,
All right, Doug, you had a thought?
We split that Andover neighborhood. If we're going to put a new elementary school out Richard Road, can we go back and look at putting that Ace neighborhood back together?
The Andover neighborhood.
I think we did.
They're currently double
I think
things,
it's,
right?
you see it's in there. It's in there.
I'll still get marketed by
Somebody's got your email address.
no, it's
What do you know what study areas are? Anybody help me with study areas there?
study areas.
What area are we talking about? Did I hear ACE?
Yeah, the area that feeds into ACE.
It's all about first section.
Which one were you talking about? Which study area?
243.
254, 66, 253, 265, 252, 270, possibly
They are in ACE.
They're in.
They're in ACE.
They're in ACE.
Do you want to talk about it?
We want to move them out of ACE?
No.
No.
We put them back. I didn't think we got back in ACE.
I didn't put it.
Yeah, we see they're in ACE.
They're in it. They're there. Email it. Hey, Doug.
So email them back.
They owe you. They owe
Trying
you.
to be responsive.
And it's only
Okay, anybody else?
100%, so it's not bad. And it's only 110%, so.
I have one
Going down.
suggestion. We've now, with this, if I'm recalling the numbers and my memory's fading at this stage, but I think we've moved Stonewall up now to 111% capacity. And we've now moved Southern down below capacity. And there's study areas here that are on the scenario C that are going to Stonewall below Wellington that are currently go to Picadome, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And if we move those back, kept them at Picadome, or moved them to Southern, both of which have room, and that would get Stonewall back down, so it's not 111% anymore.
That makes sense to me. walking distance for any of those folks anywhere. I don't
One big neighborhood.
Yeah, if I may interrupt, that Stonewall being low for capacity may be a way to address that Clays Mill non-contiguous pocket we have on the bottom.
Stonewall's not low. Stonewall's now at 111% since we moved a chunk of Clay's Mill into it. With this is what we're working on right here with our draft.
But Stonewall's projected though on scenario C, Stonewall's projected in 3 years when this goes into effect to be at 88%.
Yeah, it's decreasing.
down.
So actually with the new numbers moving in, it's probably going to be at 99%.
I think maybe another issue we need to look at in that same area is Wellington is looking to raise maybe 30% over the next 5 years. So maybe moving some of that with those openings.
And that's one of the socioeconomic areas we talked about having smaller classrooms also.
Wellington?
No, well, we're talking about Wellington or Wellington. Okay, never mind, sorry.
So with Wellington is
Projected
currently at 99. We haven't touched that with our thinking here. But on the eastern border of it, we now have Lansdowne and Southern both with blue. I mean, I'll concede this other thing I was talking about, the Stonewall's supposed to be going down. If that's, I don't know if kids can actually walk there. I don't have my scale here, but maybe some of these easternmost parts of Wellington could get moved into Southern or Lansdowne. I don't think the study areas up there.
Well, Southern's at 94, and Lansdowne's at 98. So, you know, is it worth moving folks out of Wellington when we're pretty close to those capacities anyway? Nobody lives in Chilco Park.
Right.
Well, that's probably not true.
Yeah.
Nobody officially.
Gillis Frisbee golf.
Yeah.
Alan,
Yeah.
I don't know if Scott knows the answer to this, Bob would be able to answer this here, but I'm a little perplexed that Wellington is showing that it's continuing to grow. It doesn't jive with what's going on around there. The other schools are declining. There's not any appreciable amount of undeveloped land in the Wellington area, so I'm just curious as to why that would have been slated as a school that's going to continue to grow over the next 5 years. And I wonder if Scott knows that.
Well, could it be that they're projecting from younger families being there now?
You would think that would show up in Stonewall, perhaps, too. And
Some of those apartments that are being built over there maybe are higher density.
they usually don't produce, elementary students in the same way that single-family houses do.
That's a large amount also that's increasing. It's not a small amount.
There's nothing over there.
Well,
And Bob may have the answer for that, so I would certainly like us to confirm that, but I didn't know if Scott did. We're just curious.
It's with that insight and that we really aren't below capacity very much at Southern and or Lansdowne. I would suggest that we leave Wellington.
I would say, just offhand, just looking at Wellington initially right here without going deeper in the data and really investigating this, the reason why it's raising is we project future kindergarten classes on what the current kindergarten class size is. So in Wellington right now, you have a large kindergarten class of 134 students living in there. That's the largest class out of the 6 classes. If we project that to continue on, even if they're losing students, it goes to 130, 120 the next year, we're replacing 101s with 130. That's why it's showing that increase. That would be my first guess, just looking at the numbers.
Incoming students will be the same as they are now. Well,
Stonewall's to the opposite. They don't do 112 and all their others.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm recommending we just leave it as is for now. So you good with that? Anyone else? Got a method to this madness here. Nobody else, and we've addressed some of the public's concerns about asking us to look at other areas. Let's see what we've got. So I'd like to look at these capacities as we have them right here, and then could we look at the socioeconomic free and reduced lunch numbers and see what we've done there. And if we're lucky enough that we can live with all of them, we're done. Yes, right.
It looks like, and this is an area where it seems like it would make sense where there's growth. This new school east of I-75, we've filled it to capacity, and it looks like we're looking at 40% growth over the next 5 years. And that tends to make more sense, you know, along those lines. So maybe we look at reducing that capacity in some way, shape, or form.
Reducing which capacity of the proposed school?
Yeah, so for the school.
Okay. Well, again,
we're going to have another school.
Another new school mitigates against that.
Could Mary let us know when the third potential elementary school might come along behind the other two new ones?
She just told us.
3 years.
32 or 19?
Yeah.
You may want to bet on that.
Glad you give it.
All right, folks, I want everybody taking a look at our capacity numbers here. Let's see if there's anything terribly egregious at the moment.
Sir, no, sorry.
And really, we're back where we were. We're the only one that is outside acceptable parameters, really, is Rosa Parks. And again, I've heard, leave it alone.
It's trending down. How many portables have built for parks?
I don't know.
We have one.
One. Thanks. One.
Oh, they do it. What's the capacity now? 123.
Okay. It was a long time ago.
Just for curiosity, we look at 405 and just see how many fit that is. That's a study area so far.
Study area. Where is it?
Rosa Parks, with current attendance areas, does have 123 in their current area, 123%.
They're currently, we're leaving it at 123%, so they're used to it. I mean, I know we want to make it smaller, but...
But it's going down.
Right, exactly. I think we leave it alone,
That's not a growth
too.
area.
Right, I think we just leave it alone.
Does anybody remember why, or do you guys know why 407, 409 are going to James Lane Allen?
I think it's just farmland.
It's just an easy stretch of Parker's Mill, but 404 and 405, it would be curious to know how many kids are in there, because they're closer to probably a couple other schools.
407 and 409 are outside the urban service boundary as well. They're not sewer. So it's wrong way.
Oh, there you go.
That's meal rate.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It sure is, yeah.
Well, and so is...
Yeah, this is the urban service boundary. And you want to know how many are in 405 and 404?
Yes, please.
Nothing in 404 and 9 students in 405. 406 has nothing, 408 has 1.
404 is driving, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And 407 are 2 parks.
Okay. Ladies, gentlemen, are we livable, at least on the capacity side? Okay. Let's look at it on the free and reduced side, please, Scott.
All right.
Get those. are we calling, is this scenario E?
This is scenario E.
What?
E is for excellent.
That's what works, right?
We don't want to get to scenario F.
Yeah, they don't start going down. That's how it's going to work. You're saying we're not going to go with this scenario B. We're going to put some schools at 100% capacity. But we're okay with all those things on the north. That state thing. Yeah. And that's what else. Yeah.
All right, do we have our free and reduced numbers up here?
Yes, they're up.
All right, is everybody taking a look at our free and reduced numbers?
N is free, no N is reduced, paid.
Yes is N is paid, Y is free or reduced.
Can you say that?
Folks, some thoughts?
Still have schools 90.
Right, you want like 3 of them now?
Right.
90 is not a magic number, nor is 85. I'm just wondering if we made those situations first and they are.
Well, I think I really stuck out to me that got worse for Kate. Like it jumps.
77.
Which age now?
59, is that what it's on?
I'm sorry.
It looks like Mary Todd went up. And what it is currently,
Gates.
What is it currently?
William Wells Brown is at 94.
it's the same as it is right now. There's no,
You want to make it worse?
they're not making it better either.
Yeah. And then on the reverse side, we've got the same,
So no change.
you know, Rosa Parks and Ace.
Can we check to see if the capacity change in those high poverty schools too, because we are taking consideration of what, if we have smaller, like children's locations, that also is based on capacity change. So we look at, see what that, I can't see it right now, but we may want to look at that and those that are above 90, if the capacity goes over, which can also help out.
Was that a request for me?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Could you say that again? I was looking at something else.
Checking on above 90 with free and reduced lunch, looking at their capacity to see if that decreased. Because that was one of the things that Bob mentioned as well that could be addressed.
Right. Just a caveat to that, though, that's within the limits, because if the capacity goes significantly lower, they're going to lose teachers. The class sizes are only going to go down to a certain level before staffing is going to go down as well.
Everything we do affects something else. That's what makes it hard.
Yeah, and I really didn't hear the request. I couldn't understand it.
Can we just do the capacity of the current math, please?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, we'd like, so I think what Malcolm wanted was to look at both simultaneously so that we could compare.
Unfortunately, we can't do that. We have to flip back and forth.
Can we just look at the capacity for those
We
five
know what
schools?
schools they are. We know what we're looking at. So we just have capacity.
Yeah, which schools do you want to look at?
Maybe
The ones that are under this scenario that are over 90% free and reduced lunch.
Okay.
Looking at,
Well, let's look at that, and then I'll do that. Because I can pick and choose which schools we look at. So we got Ace, or we got Arlington, Booker, Carter Valley, Mary Todd,
William Wells Brown.
yeah, William Wells Brown, Arlington, Mary Todd, and Yates. Sorry. What was the last one?
Did you get Carter Valley?
Yeah.
Harrison?
Harrison, too. Harrison Elementary, too, please.
Okay. I'll just redo it. I think there was some other 89%ers in there. Did you want to look at those too?
Oh.
Okay.
I don't think so. It's an arbitrary number, but
So now you wanted to look at the capacities now?
Yes.
yes, please.
Pretty good.
Okay.
Now, hold on one second. Hold on.
I mean, just okay, they have the capacity again. That's what I'm.
So what have they changed?
But if they're all under capacity, that gives us some comfort.
Right.
And all but the first two are going trending down.
That's correct.
William Wells is going up.
Oh, yeah.
And it's at 97, like to move to those. That's the only one.
Yes.
And then Mary Todd went up in their free and reduced lunch budget a few percent. So we can.
So if William Wells Brown is trending up, then let's look at it, see if there's something we can do to change that.
Well, I want us to be mindful in that neighborhood.
Yeah, one day.
The notes we got today.
Right.
Yes.
That's the letter. It's true. It's the letter.
Yeah, the letter we got.
Yeah, I think it's
I think you're right.
I think we're good. Good point out.
I think we're good.
They were saying that we're going to get the best.
I agree.
Let's have a good plan.
At least we put up 6 now that they present it.
You know, they're trying to,
They were starting to feel like a community.
and they cease not to move their kids.
I think.
Did you see the letter? Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking is threes that parents still may want to. We need to look back and look now at the feeder pattern.
Right.
And we also need to hear what people have to say about this
Yeah,
public.
I agree.
Also, I want to mention, if you remember, Austin mentioned too about East End and West End in particular.
and how we, before that particular time, how we select those students out from both of those particular neighborhoods. So in addition to the letter that we see today, that's something to take into consideration as well.
But here's what I'm proposing, folks. I want to freeze this map. Area E. And it might end up being the map. I want everybody to understand that. But it's not absolute, that we still have a lot of other things to look at. But I think it's time for us to move on to the next thing, and I believe that to be feeder patterns and middle school as to how it relates to this map that we've frozen. It will give us the opportunity to hear what the public thinks about this map. I'm confident that they're not shy and they'll tell us what they think. I think it will also give us a good starting point for the rest of our work. I think we've developed a template that makes sense, and the rest of our work should go with a bit more rapidity. So, without objection, I move we. Lester.
Scott, at the principals meeting last week, we're talking to Pates Creek Middle School, and we adjusted their capacity from 900 to 700. It really needs to be 750 because of the magnet program that he has there. A portion of them come from within his districted area and wouldn't affect the capacity to begin with.
Okay. So,
and that's preparation for our next meeting. Right.
And let me tell you what I'm going to prepare for next meeting then, is I'm going to make this change and adjust the 599 and 598 study areas and bring the 598 up into Veterans Park.
Right.
Then I'm going to create the scenario E map. Then what I'll do is create a scenario E map with the overlay of our last middle school map, which was scenario C, middle school. That'll give you guys some time to look at it, see where those areas that we might need to look, and change and make adjustments.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, that's what I had in mind. So, obviously, I agree.
May I ask, is this a map that you want posted?
I can't hear you, Lisa.
Is this a map that you want posted? Like, are you
Yes.
prepared to?
Yes,
Doesn't seem to matter. What do we want?
Yes, that's a very good point.
Scott?
Yes. Yeah.
How quickly can you have a PDF of this to us?
Probably tomorrow.
Okay, it'll be posted for all the public to examine it. We've got a motion on the floor from Doug to accept. Ron. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. You're gonna love this. We're gonna dismiss 5 minutes early. Did we post the February date?
Yes.
Okay, so they're all on the schedule through February. That last week, we don't have anything scheduled, and that's because I'm out of town. So if the committee wants to go on without me, what's that? The last week in February. I'm out of town. I'm in.
I thought
I'm going to Dublin.
Monday.
Are you dialing in? Will you dial into the meeting if we have it?
Yeah.
No signal, no signal. No signal.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to be out of the country from Monday to Thursday.
Yeah, so we all go with you.
No, I'm open for offers.
Okay, well, I'm going to get working on this, so...
This is great work tonight. Congratulations.